Open letter came out in La Presse this week. Lucien Bouchard and his associates co-authoring the piece, and they're addressing the pressing challenges currently facing Canada's economy. And of course, the threats from Donald Trump are there, part of that. But there's a lot of other things wrong in the Canadian economy that need addressing as well. And they tackle that. Sébastien Roy is a partner at Davies, Ward, Phillips, and Vineberg, one of the three co-authors of the piece. Sébastien, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Elias. How are you?
I'm doing great. Listen, it's not lost on me that your piece starts off by talking about something that I keep hearing every now and again when we talk about the Canadian economy, productivity. Why, in publishing this piece and dealing with the threats of Trump, do you start off with productivity?
Well, we've known for a long time that we were not the most productive economy. In fact, we are a laggard on the world stage in terms of productivity. And Lucien Bouchard, no coincidence that he's picking up this theme again in 2025, because he was part of a group in 2005 that said this is an issue and it's going to be an issue. And I guess for 10 or 20 years, it was less of an issue because our economy was doing quite well. We turned our attention to all sorts of other issues. But now, with the threat of tariffs and frankly, many would say the existential threat to our economy and our businesses that relies so much on U.S. markets, productivity, once again, and the competitivity of our businesses is something that's got to be at the foreground. And we are thinking about this in the context of, our experience. We are business lawyers. We finance, buy, and sell businesses on behalf of our clients. And we know that there are a lot of businesses for all sorts of reasons that are on the selling block right now in Quebec. Some stats that we put forward in our paper talked about 24,000 businesses for sale last year. And we know that if you're an entrepreneur selling your business, productivity, so reinvesting in better ways of working, in new machinery, new software, new markets, might not be top of mind for you. And that's a problem because that's what we all need to be thinking about right now as we face these threats. And so, the fact that people need to take over these businesses, that there needs to be a transition and that we need to encourage that transition is something that's not lost on us, and it's time for that issue to come back to the foreground. And it's our contribution, in all of this discussion, this debate that we're having in our society. How do we respond to these threats, right? So our governments will say, right now we need to aggressively put in counter tariffs and diversify our markets. We're business lawyers. We're in the business community, and we're like, well, one of the things that we also need to be thinking about is getting some new blood in businesses that are for sale and make sure that they're productive, that they're competitive, because that's going to be to our advantage. Like we can't always be relying on the access to the U.S. markets. Mm-hmm. It's not a given, as we're seeing right now. And so we think that being more productive in our business is going to ensure that our society is more resilient. And so in a way here, there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity for us to become a more productive society that is less vulnerable to these types of shocks.
So can I ask if you believe that the Trump stuff, the Trump tariff stuff, right now is being used as an excuse to cover up much more endemic, systemic problems in Quebec, in Canada, when it comes to how we treat business?
Well, I'm not sure it's an excuse. I mean, it's certainly a big threat, and it highlights some of our vulnerabilities, right? And so I heard you talking before on your show, and there are some things to which we're vulnerable. So we are less productive. We tend to invest less in our businesses, right? Like the hours that we work don't have the same output as the hours worked in the U.S., and that needs to be addressed. And it's a challenge, and we think one of the challenges associated with that is the fact that there are so many of entrepreneurs that started up businesses in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s that now, they deserve to get a break. And we need to encourage younger entrepreneurs, not necessarily to start up their own businesses, because in the collective mind, if you're someone starting into business, you're like, well, I want to start my own business. Look, there's lots of businesses out in the industrial parks, around the city and Ville Saint-Laurent, all over, that are looking for people to pick up the mantle. And if you're a young entrepreneur who's backed by capital, you may have the energy more than people who want to sell, to reinvest in these businesses and make them competitive again.
And it could be a lot easier than starting something from scratch, taking over something that is already successful. We're with
100%.
We're with Sébastien Roy. He's one of a trio of co-authors, penned a piece in La Presse this week, talking about entrepreneurship and what lies ahead for Canada in light of Donald Trump's threat. So how do we jumpstart the entrepreneurship dossier here? Because as I look at government policy, I think rightfully some people are pointing out that in Canada we have a lot of taxation, we have a lot of regulation, and whether it's capital gains taxes, if you're talking about someone who wants to sell their business, right, stuff like that. I know they've kind of sort of gone back on that because the government was prorogued, but it seems like the regulatory and tax environment in this country isn't conducive to everything you've just outlined.
I think you're right. So I think that you're putting your finger on it. So the first thing on the taxation standpoint, and as we say in our piece, that I guess it's a good first step that we have tabled for now, the reforms on capital gains. But that reform is clearly not helpful to the transition of these businesses, right? So if you started up your business many, many years ago and you're going to sell it now, it is possible that you have a very large capital gain tax that's waiting for you, and that's a disincentive to sell your business, right? It's a disincentive to transition. That needs to be reconsidered, and some would say just needs to be sent back to the scrap heap of bad ideas. Mm-hmm. So that needs to be reconsidered. The fact is we do have a lot of regulation here. There is a trend to deregulation with our southern neighbor. They're going very, very heavy into that. And we need to be competitive. We are part of this North American marketplace. We need to attract the best and brightest. We need to attract capital. And there is lots of red tape and regulation in Canada, and that needs to be looked at very seriously. You just need to be competitive. Our southern neighbor is going all in. We read about it every day, going all in on deregulation. Mm-hmm. We need to do our own exercise. Can
I just ask you, Sébastien, because I have a listener who read the column, right? Louise writes me a note on our text line saying that they read the column that you co-wrote with Lucien Bouchard. And they bring it up. Listen, this is CJD, we're an English radio station, right? And they bring up the specific environment in Quebec, Bill 96 of late, and what has happened to make running a business in Quebec specifically even more difficult than the rest of Canada. Is this just a bad mixture for Quebec? And I know, listen, you got to protect culture, you got to protect language, but it seems like we've gone over the top. Do you have anything to say on that when it comes to how businesses have to deal with it?
Well, I know it's a real challenge, right? We work with smaller businesses and frankly larger businesses, and we know that all this red tape, the translation issues are often a problem. Quebec has its own, Quebec is its own special place, and it's got its own special way of looking at language, and there's a reason for that historically. But I understand that for entrepreneurs, it's one more layer of regulation to deal with, and it adds up. It just all adds up because there's a lot of stuff.
Sébastien,
from that to all sorts of other things.
We're going to have to leave it there. I'll direct our listeners to read the piece that you co-wrote along with a couple of your colleagues, including Lucien Bouchard, and I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having us.
That's Sébastien Roy. He's a partner at Davies, Phillips, and Vineberg.